Let's talk about Dutch culture shocks. The first culture shock that I've noticed is window culture. Now, what is window culture? Simply put, window culture is the culture of looking in random people's windows. Now, if you're not from the Netherlands, this seems like a completely foreign and highly invasive practice. But here in the Netherlands, as far as I'm aware and from what I understand, this is normal. It's normal to look in people's windows as you pass by their houses, and not only that, but if you leave your blinds or curtains open, then you have to expect and accept that people will look inside of your window. Now, I find this to be very fascinating because the Dutch and Europeans as a whole tend to value privacy quite a bit. But for whatever reason, this seems to be an exception, and a very big exception at that. I've noticed since I've gotten here that a lot of Dutch homes have very clear windows with absolutely no tint whatsoever. I think the biggest reason why this is because of the weather. Because the Netherlands doesn't really get that much sunshine, like let's say for example Texas, where I'm from, they don't really need to have tint on the windows because they don't really have much light to block. And because of this lack of tint on the windows, if you're riding your bike past a Dutch home and you look through the front window and there are no curtains or blinds to prevent you from looking through the window, you can pretty much see all the way through their house. As a matter of fact, I've noticed that whenever I ride past certain homes or walk past certain homes and I look through the window, I can actually see the backyard from the front. Now, aside from the lack of window tint, I think another reason why this is because of the Dutch zoning laws. In the US, the zoning laws generally don't allow homes to be very close to the sidewalk, meaning that even if the windows didn't have tint on them, you still wouldn't be able to see into people's homes because you can't really see the window or you can't see inside of the window from the sidewalk because the sidewalk is so much further from the front of the house than it is here in the Netherlands, typically speaking. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, but generally, when you're walking down the sidewalk in a neighborhood here in the Netherlands, you will be right in front of people's houses. You will basically be on their front patios. Granted, people here don't often have front patios, but just to put it into perspective, in the US, if you have a front patio, that's pretty much where the sidewalk would be if you lived in the Netherlands. So I think that those two things combine for a natural result of Dutch window culture. Of course, everybody has natural curiosity when you're walking past a house. It's almost human nature to look through somebody's window if you can. And here in the Netherlands, you can. Now, like I said earlier, Dutch people value privacy quite a bit. And that brings me to my next Dutch culture shock, which is the internet. The internet here in the Netherlands is not the same as the internet in America. What do I mean by that? Well, simply put, whenever you get on Google or YouTube, here in the Netherlands, you can expect to see a pop-up similar to this. This is something that I never ever experienced back in the US because it's my understanding that the internet privacy laws are much more lenient in the US than they are here in the Netherlands. Now, although I'm no expert on internet privacy, I do definitely appreciate the fact that things are more secure here because a lot of my business, really my entire business, is predicated on the digital space. So knowing that things are generally more secure and that you have more privacy here definitely helps. That being said, there are some downsides to this as well, namely the lack of access to certain things that you might want access to on the internet. For example, I've noticed that certain Netflix movies and shows that I might want to watch here in the Netherlands are no longer accessible, whereas when I was in the US, they were. And something that I found out recently is that every country has different availability as far as their selection of movies and shows to watch on Netflix, as well as their access to blog posts and articles and websites on the internet. And if you're in a position where you want to access content such as Netflix shows and movies, or blog posts, articles, websites, etc., that aren't available in your region, I have a solution for you. And that brings me to NordVPN, the sponsor of today's video. NordVPN's mission is to free you from online threats, surveillance, and censorship. But more on that later. For now, picture this. You're warm and cozy in bed after a long day at work. You have your favorite snack and your fully charged laptop. You're locked and loaded for a blissful binge-watching session of your favorite Netflix show. You open up Netflix and your favorite show is no longer there. Confused, you start looking for an explanation. You find an article about the shows that Netflix recently removed. You open it and it's not available in your region. So much for the free world. After wasting more of your precious free time searching for an answer, you finally find a blog post that you have access to. On the blog, you see an advertisement for a streaming service that promises you access to shows and movies worldwide. You click on the advertisement and it gives your computer a virus. Don't let this be you. With just one click, NordVPN shields you from potential threats like man-in-the-middle attacks, phishing attempts, password attacks, DDoS attacks, ransomware attacks, malware, and malvertising. I would explain what all of those are, but with NordVPN, you won't need to worry about it anyways. Just know this. Hackers are working harder than you, but they're not working as hard as NordVPN. Cyber threats are growing at a rapid rate, but with NordVPN, you're not only safe, you're empowered to explore the digital world with complete confidence, including the parts that aren't available in your country. From blog posts to articles to Netflix shows to sports and everything else in between, NordVPN has you covered. If you're ready to regain control of your power and privacy on the internet, NordVPN offers a risk-free experience, courtesy of their 30-day money-back guarantee. Don't wait until it's too late. Click the link in the description or go to nordvpn.com/JordanGreen to take your power back. The next Dutch culture shock that I've noticed since being in the Netherlands is that the kids here still play outside. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was in the US, where I'm from in particular, I noticed that as the years passed, there were less and less children playing outside. And you could come up with a variety of different reasons for this, namely the rise of social media, more video games, more reasons for kids to stay inside. I think that this really just comes down to the zoning laws. Now, I'll probably make a whole separate video on Dutch urban planning and things of that nature in the future, but just know this. Here in the Netherlands, there is a very extensive network of bicycle infrastructure. Now, when you're a child and you maybe don't have access to a person who can drive you somewhere, maybe your parents are at work or anything like that, what's the most feasible way of getting around? Riding your bicycle. I know that when I was a kid, I used to ride my bike all over the place. And here in the Netherlands, that is the case. Now, in the US, I think that a big part of the reason why people aren't really as comfortable with allowing their kids to do this anymore is because, for one, the crime rate. Okay, as far as the crime rate goes, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If I was a parent, would not feel comfortable letting my kid just roam around freely, haphazardly, without really being within earshot distance. I would still let them, but I wouldn't be comfortable doing it. If I was raising a child here in the Netherlands, I would. And as a matter of fact, studies have shown that Dutch kids are the happiest kids in the world. That is no coincidence. Kids here have more freedom than kids in the US, the land of the free. How ironic. Here in the Netherlands, children still play outside, they still go ding-dong ditching, they still go to parks with their friends, ride their bikes together, and generally interact in person. Back home in the US, this is not something that I saw very frequently by the time that I left. And it is very sad indeed, and I think that this is something that the US definitely needs to learn from. Now, speaking of bike lanes and kids playing outside, the next thing that I've noticed about the Netherlands, the next thing that has shocked me about the Dutch, is the prevalence of rollerblading. This is something that I had literally no idea about. I had no idea that rollerblading was so popular here, but the more I think about it, the more sense it makes. The Netherlands is very, very flat, and I don't know about you, but I personally would not want to rollerblade up a hill or down a hill. It sounds very dangerous. Here in the Netherlands, most of the country is flat. And again, there's an extensive nationwide network of bicycle lanes. But rollerblading does seem to be a very popular leisure activity here. People aren't necessarily rollerblading as a means of transportation, but as far as leisure goes, whether it be children or adults, people here do like to rollerblade. The only place I've seen this in the US was Santa Monica and Venice Beach in California. This was a very flat area, the weather was very nice, and they had bike lanes. No coincidence there.